It's actually surprising to me too. We just hit 2 years on the Tech Your Business podcast, where every single week we break down technology for you so you can easily use it in your business to stay ahead of the competition. I'm your host, Peter Banigo, and like I said, it's surprising. It's a special day today because 2 years ago, the first episode of this podcast went out. So when I started this podcast 2 years ago, there were multiple reasons because I know I say different, probably I had my Toastmasters project back then. I was trying to make the Target ICT blog into a podcast, so many different things. But for the extension of the blog, it is for all those things, all those reasons I started this podcast. Also trying to be comfortable in front of the camera. I think it has changed. It has grown into something that I'm really proud of. It has become a resource for business owners from all over the world. And honestly, deep down, I never knew it would come this far. Because I know at first I felt it was an experiment or something like that. So the podcast has been growing organically for the last 2 years. It has been reaching business owners worldwide who want to stay ahead of technology. And it's satisfying that even without any promotion, just putting out episodes every week or twice a week, as the case may be, it's satisfying that a lot of people are interested in what we have to put out. A lot of people are sharing this content. A lot of people are giving feedback on this content. And that shows it's actually valuable and it's something that's actually helping a couple of people. So I mentioned this 16 episodes ago. That was when we had the 100th episode, marked the 100th episode. That's at Target ICT, we just launched a second podcast focusing on sustainable technology called Green Tech Pulse. And you can subscribe to the podcasts too if you enjoy Tech Your Business. So the link to Green Tech Pulse will be in the show notes. So I think, as usual, I'll thank the guests. The guests have really been keeping this podcast on, keeping this podcast alive because they've been sharing their insights, sharing their knowledge on different topics from angles that I won't cover, angles that I probably won't think of, and sharing topics that I'm not an expert on, topics I am not even interested in, but I know would be of interest to you, the audience. And this, I believe, makes the podcast, the guests coming in with their varied points of view. It makes the podcast a lot more rounded and valuable. So apart from having guests on Tech Your Business, one thing I've been doing since we had the last episode, the first year episode last year, I've been guesting on different podcasts. So I can't count exactly, but I know I've been on over 20 podcasts in the last 2 years. I've been sharing our message. I've been learning from different communities. I've been sharing my story. So maybe I don't talk about myself that much on Tech Your Business, but maybe if you can check other podcasts I am on, you might, if you're interested, you might learn a lot more about me than you know. So, and about Target ICT too, not to forget. So this exchange of ideas, meeting these new people, new relationships built everywhere have been really great for Tech Your Business, have been really great for Target ICT too. So I think one thing, the next thing I'll talk about is maybe numbers. Let's talk about some numbers. As of today, we have almost 40 recorded guest episodes. So what I usually do is we did that October, I think September, October, November, we record a lot of episodes. So at some days we have about 6 recordings, 4 recordings for guest episodes. So currently some of them have come out, but we still have a lot of them still unproduced, a lot of them still in the pipeline. So we have about 40, if I'm not mistaken, 40 guest episodes, which means that for most of next year, at least up till June 2025, we're going to get episodes every single week guaranteed for the podcast. As a result of this backlog, we'll be posting guest interviews. So I know a lot of people reach out to get interviewed on the podcast, and I get those emails on my phone. So I see I see it. So if you want to be a guest, that's for you. We'll be posting guest interviews till 2025. I believe February or March, so that's whatever we record will still be fresh. So we don't have guest episodes coming out in a year. You know, with technology, the knowledge has to be fresh because just give it a week and it's still that's how technology works. So the interviews would be recording next year, would be coming out in the second half of 2025. The interviews that the 40 I talked about would all push them out before June 2025 so that everything is fresh, like I said. So we'll continue accepting guest inquiries through Podmatch. And one other thing we've done too for guests who definitely want to have their message out on the podcast, want to have still have an episode on the podcast. We've introduced priority booking options for the guests. So I think that's on the podcast website, techyourbusinesspodcast.com. You can always reach out via email. We've done one of them so far. I guess if you look at the episodes on YouTube, you'll know which one of them that was a priority episode because it's different and it stands out a bit from the rest. The priority episodes stand out a bit. So if you want to be on the podcast, you want to be featured, and you want a fast episode, not after the second half of 2025, then you can talk with us about that. So for the last 3 months, still on this, on the backlog I talked about, for the last few months, we've been releasing episodes twice a week. As against, it's a weekly podcast, but we're releasing episodes twice a week just so we get as many episodes out on time. And yeah, this is what has been happening. So probably by the first quarter of next year, sometime in the first quarter, we'll go back to one episode a week first so that we can have an episode of Tech Your Business, an episode of Green Tech Pulse, and I can also do other things in the business, not just having interviews. I enjoy them, but this doesn't pay the bills like I would say. So I think apart from that, I just mentioned that we'll be returning to weekly in the first quarter of 2025. We are still talking about numbers, so I'll talk about the listener statistics. So I talked about this in the first year episode. You can always go back and compare. That should be episode 49. Listener statistics for YouTube. We'll talk about the countries because this one thing guests always a lot of the time want to know. Currently, for the last 365 days, we've had 17% of listeners come from the UK on YouTube, 11.7% come from the US, 4% come from Canada, 3.2% come from Germany, and 2.9% come from Australia. So you can see we have a more UK audience on YouTube, and I believe that's because Target ICT is a UK company, so maybe that's why. For the gender splits, we have male. We have for the last 365 days, 92.1% of the listeners have been male. I'm not really sure why, because that leaves just 7.9%. But let's see how it goes. So if there's anything I'm doing wrong that's repelling anyone else, please let me know. Apart from that, for the age splits on YouTube, most of the viewers are in the 25 to 34 age range. So that's 42.7%. That's almost half of them. Then in the 35 to 44 age range, I have 23.9%. And in the 18 to 24 age range, we have 22.2%. So that's for YouTube. The next thing we'll talk about is Spotify and audio. So for Spotify, the stats are a bit upside down compared to YouTube. For Spotify, we have 53% of the listeners coming from the US, 14.2% coming from Nigeria. That's where I'm from and where I am currently. And 6.5% coming from the UK, where my company, Target ICT, is. The gender split is much better on Spotify with 64.2% of with most of the listeners being male, 64.2%, and the age split, so it's different from YouTube. We have most of the listeners in the 35 to 44 age range. So that's 41.5%. We have 45 to 45 to 59 age range, we have 21.6%. And in the 28 to 34 age range, we have 15.9% of the listeners. So I think that takes care of the statistics. And I think one thing I love about the statistics I just mentioned is that, like I mentioned 1 year ago in the first year episode, the first 100 episodes of the podcast would be, or yeah, because this 116, we are mostly allowed to go out organically. So that means we barely did any ads. We just made the posts, tweaked, and watched how they were consumed. So we understand the listeners. We're trying to understand what the listeners want, and also staying true to the core mission of the podcast. But starting from episode 101, we started testing out adverts. And over time, depending on the results, each episode of the podcast would be promoted to relevant audiences for better reach. So I think that's saying that going forward, you'd see some episodes being advertised. I think we've tested it out on a couple of episodes after episode 100, and the results haven't been bad. Another change that you'd see as we hit 2 years today is solo episodes. So you see a lot more solo episodes, because when I was looking at the statistics for previous episodes, we have a couple, I don't think, probably 10 or less than 20, definitely less than 20 solo episodes. But I noticed that the solo episodes get better engagements, even though they take a lot more time to prepare, because you have to get all the numbers, everything right, as against an interview where you just ask the questions and have the guests feed the answers to you from their experience and everything. But I believe this, with the kind of engagement the solo episodes get, I believe they offer more value to the listener. So, and apart from that, so I've had two guests, Liz Coley and Sarah Luce here. And also I've forgotten the other name. So I'm doing this on the fly, so I don't have everything off. So I think some guests have talked about the importance of doing solo episodes, and I think would work on having more of these going in the pipeline going forward. I think so. That's about it for this episode. Thank you for your support once again. Thank you for listening, for sharing, for subscribing, and telling others about Tech Your Business. So I always say the growth of the podcast won't be possible without you, the listener, you, the person watching. And as we step into the third year of this journey, time really flies, honestly. As we step into the third year, I hope that this keeps improving, this keeps bringing value to you, the content, the delivery, the guests, everything else keeps improving, and this keeps growing, this keeps being more valuable to you because you're the reason this is being done. So if you found value in any episode of the podcast, don't forget to share it with others who might benefit from it. And till the third year episode next November, that's the next time I'll be doing this. Don't forget to keep taking your business. Bye for now.